Hey students, Coach Lamb here, giving you a quick tutorial on metals, nonmetals, and metalloids. There are two videos on this. The other one is a little bit more in depth, and the first video looks a lot at the placement of these three items on the periodic table. This video is going to look a little bit more at their properties and how do we test for the differences. So let's go ahead and get started on that. All right, first off, you got the grouping of elements. In the video before this, you saw that we classify elements where they fall on the periodic table as a metal, a nonmetal, or metalloid. The left side are the metals, the right side are the nonmetals, and then you have that stair-step zigzag line there off on the little bit towards the right that are your metalloids. By far, the metals are your most abundant, your nonmetals come in second place, and then the metalloids are the most scarce. All right, first off, let's look at the metals because that comprises the largest section. 70% of the elements are metals. Okay, what are pots and pans made of? They're made of metals. Why? Because they're good conductors of heat and electricity. Why are wires made of metal? Because one, they're ductile. They can actually you can draw metal into wires, and you can conduct electricity across them. Jewelry. Why is jewelry made of metal? Because it's very lustrous. It's very shiny. So here's a few bullet point notes for your metals that you might want to take down if you haven't taken them already. Metals, good conductors of heat, good conductors of electricity. They are lustrous. They are very shiny and reflective. When we get into minerals, we'll look at the different classifications of luster, but metals typically are very shiny, reflective. We just group that all as luster here for middle school. Malleable, meaning it can be pounded and shaped. You can mold this stuff. Malleable comes from the root word mold. It can be pounded without breaking, by the way. Now, metals can break, mind you, but they are more malleable than things that are non-metals. So they're more likely to be molded very easily. All right, ductile, meaning we can draw them into a wire. We can draw them into nice thin wires, run them through cables. Some examples of metals, everybody loves gold and silver. They're two very common metals. Other things like iron, aluminum, copper, those are other very common metals. And so we use these things for a lot of good stuff. Now we got a discussion on nonmetals. When we have those wires that we made out of metal, like copper wire, we cover it with something. We cover it with nonmetals. And the reason is because the nonmetals are insulators. They're not going to let that electricity through it. Therefore, you're protecting people when you got the wires there. You're not too worried about an extension cord because it's nice and insulated with the plastic covering. The handles of your pots and pans, they're typically either wood or plastic because those are insulators. Your clothing even is made of cotton, which is carbon-based, and that's going to be a good insulator. It also keeps you warm because it doesn't let your heat out. All right, so your non-metal notes, usually gases or brittle solids at room temperature. Okay, so there are a lot of gases in the non-metal section. They are poor conductors of heat and electricity. Please don't get this confused. Heat and electricity can travel through them, but not very well. Okay, now we do have some insulators that are so good that we can almost eliminate the heat and electricity going through, but think of your clothes. You wear your clothes for a while. It's designed to keep you warm and nice and insulated, but some of the body heat does get to the surface still. They are insulators. Now, there are only 17 nonmetals, but this is still the second most abundant group on the periodic table. Abundant meaning we have the most of. It's in second place. Many of the elements are essential for life. We use these nonmetals a lot. We're talking things like oxygen, hydrogen. Oxygen you breathe. Hydrogen and oxygen combine to make our water. All right, carbon. You are a carbon-based life form. You're a living thing. You go through the carbon cycle. So carbon, sulfur, nitrogen. Nitrogen makes up most of our atmosphere. Sulfur is used all kinds of places. So a lot of different things. Nonmetals, very essential. A lot of good stuff there. All right, so now we got our metalloids. This is that kind of strange group. It's on the stair-step line, but it's really unique and cool. We got computer chips made of metalloids. Why? Because metalloids, we're going to see, they are semiconductive. They'll let some heat and electricity through, but not as much as the metals. What material do they use in plastic surgery? They use a lot of silicone when they're reshaping. Somebody gets their nose broken, they have to implant stuff in there. Well, they're going to use like a silicone-based synthetic flesh. All right, so you got your metalloids. They have properties of both metals and nonmetals. They are good semiconductors. They mean they have some heat and electricity go through, but not tons. This is actually very good in some instances where you want electricity to go through, but you don't want a lot of heat build up. They're typically ductile and malleable, meaning they can be either drawn into wires like silicon, or they can be pounded in different shapes. Now, they're not as good as metals with the ductile and malleability, but they do the job. And sometimes you need their special properties where you don't let something heat up as much, or you don't want so much electricity to get through. All right, so here's a table to go ahead and draw into your notebooks if you haven't already. You've probably did this in class, but if you missed it, go ahead and get it now. You can see this is a quick breakdown, little properties table. You got your metals, metalloids, and nonmetals. And then it talks about their appearance, their conductivity, and malleability. This is a good foundation for telling the difference between these three. All right, and we're going to get into other tests later on, but this is your strong foundation. Hopefully this has served to remind you of your things. You might be watching this as a review for your final exam, or just to kind of come back and brush up on stuff if you weren't too strong. But if you need it, ask your teacher for help, and have a great day, guys. Talk to you later.